introduction. Okay, oh, we don't actually do the introductions, right, very nice. Because it's a draft policy, the staff's not doing an introduction, we're just moving right into the AC presentation. I'll leave it to Rob Seastrom to do draft policy ARIN 2014-6, remove NRPM section 7.1.
So 2014-6 involves cleanup of the NRPM. It was submitted at the same time as 2014-5, which was also a cleanup policy, which involved removing lame delegations. 2014-5 has moved along. 2014-6, however, has not. And the question is, why hasn't it? Push button. The reason is that the feeling was that, yes, this is something that maybe shouldn't be in the NRPM, maybe ought to be covered by some other document. Best practices document from ARIN, a best processes document that was owned by the community and kept by ARIN. RFC, not sure, but the question was, what does the community think about moving this forward without having that document? We have a commitment that, yes, it's okay to create that document, or ARIN will create that document, and I'm sure it's being prioritized appropriately, but it has not been forthcoming to date. So the question is, should we be getting rid of this now? Should we be waiting for such a document to exist? The text that exists in NRPM 7.1 involves maintaining IN-ADDRs and reverse lookup, pretty much the same thing for IPv6. Yes, sir.
Just one point. For those of you who have the printed discussion guide, that only references the removal of 7.1. The actual policy proposal was updated, and it involves removing both 7.1 and the next page, 656. So your discussion guide has actually only got one paragraph being removed. It's both of these being removed.
Thank you, John. So I'd like to open the mics up for discussion. What do you think? Mr. Huberman.
David Huberman from Microsoft, also the policy author. So I actually didn't include 656 in my policy. And I did that on purpose. So I was actually pretty surprised yesterday and really wanted to think about why the AC included 656. If we can go back for a moment to 7.1 text. 7.1 text makes actual operationally relevant statements. It talks about the distinction between blocks smaller than distinct/16s and distinct/16s. And it tells you what's going to actually happen in the DNS. 656, however, doesn't say that. It doesn't say that ARIN will only delegate on the nibble boundaries, that if you get a /45, ARIN will manage the individual will delegate at the /48 level, so you have 4/48s or whatever. It doesn't say anything like that. 656, if you could switch to it, please. Owen made the point yesterday, which I really liked. It talks more about hierarchy, and it talks more about what you should do as an operator with your customers. It doesn't actually talk about how ARIN configures its zone files and what it delegates and what it doesn't. So, long story short, I don't really want 656 to go away. It's not the end of the world, but I thought Owen made persuasive arguments yesterday to keep it in. I want 7.1 gone, and I'll repeat what I've said in the past. This should be RFC'd. This should have been RFC'd a long time ago. Right now we have different NIRs in other regions not following this practice. And when you have distinct/16s, they're actually delegating /24s to you, which is really messy if you don't know they're not going to do that. So.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Front microphone.
Adam Thompson again. I agree that the policy as written is highly suboptimal. On the other hand, I would argue against its complete removal, barring the insertion of some sort of better text to replace it, because right now this is just about the only stick I have to make my clients do IN-ADDR mapping at all.
Thank you. Remote participant.
Marla Azinger writes, could staff clarify what this means, please? Are you saying that when I get a new allocation for a 16 or larger, I will no longer be able to go into my ARIN account and manage my new subnets DNS by adding my name servers to that record?
Actually, no practice in existing services are intended by this change. This is entirely removing text that specifies what, if you look at 7.1, it actually places an obligation on the organization, not ARIN. And we didn't know whether or not that was appropriate in number resource management policy. Could you go to 7.1 real quick? All ISPs receiving one or more distinct 16s will be responsible for maintaining domain records for their respective customers. Is an obligation to the ISPs. The second part of it is a statement of what ARIN would do. So I just wanted to point out, we're not changing any operational practice, but the question is whether or not you want obligations like this in NRPM or not.
I might add that there's extremely confusing text as far as exactly what ARIN would do, which Mark Koster's clarified for us what ARIN does, which was what we all thought it would do. If we agreed that we wanted this sort of obligation in the NRPM, we could profitably clean it up a lot. Center microphone.
Matt Poundset, Right Side Group. I think ARIN has any DNS operator that delegates zones out to other operators has a responsibility to make sure that the child zones are answered. So I think it's totally appropriate that ARIN have some sort of policy text that requires that. So I can't support removing any of this, but or all of it rather. But I would support maybe a simplification or rewrite that makes it clear exactly what's required versus what other operational stuff should be done.
Front microphone.
Kevin Bloomberg, the Wire, ARIN AC. I have a question because we just had a policy related to the RSA, LRSA, and removing out text that was inconsistent between what really is the authoritative document, which is the RSA. So if you can go to the 656, is ARIN in the RSA requiring an organization to deal with an organization, i.e., this here is putting an onus on the ISP to then go out contractually, potentially, and have their customer deal with reverse. Does that fit into the RSA?
Presently in the RSA, there are no such obligations.
So that text, as far as the RSA is concerned, would be a no-op?
ARIN's ability to enforce this duty to the ISP is quite questionable, okay? I don't have an RSA mechanism, and I do not believe this community wants us to go revoke resource blocks simply for lack of delegation records. But if that's what's the intent, I need much clearer policy.
I support this policy.
Thank you. Center rear microphone all the way in the back.
Mike Joseph, Google. I generally support this policy, yet I continue to lament the lack of an ARIN services document. I know previously John has stated that he will either write one or we will write one. How's that going?
Sure. So we're gonna put all the services, we'll make a statement on the web page that says, here's the ARIN services. When you see ARIN services, here's what's constituted in those. And then the question will be whether or not that remains something that just sits on the website, or whether or not at some point the community wants to take ownership of that document. That's a community board discussion. We'll have a little bit more tomorrow.
Thanks, John.
Middle microphone.
Brian Johnson, DRN. The 656 policy is under IPv6, correct?
Yes.
I would support...
Section 4 is IPv4, Section 6 is IPv6.
Right. So the 656 policy here doesn't appear to me to obligate you to do anything. It just says it's your responsibility now. And operationally, your responsibility is to the community to some extent. So this doesn't appear to tell me you have to do this otherwise. It just says it's now your responsibility. You deal with it. So I would suggest the 656, if you took this and made it not IPv6 specific, took the specific address family references out, and replaced 7.1 with this and removed this from the 6 policy, you'd be able to accomplish it for both address families.
Thank you. Front center microphone.
Owen DeLong, Black Lotus Communications, ARIN AC. If we took 656 out of the proposal, I could tolerate it. But with 656 being removed as well, I think this is a very bad idea. To show what a mess the IPv4 part is, Section 4 of the manual deals with IPv4, and yet the IPv4 DNS thing we're talking about is in Section 7. So that's been a mess for a very long time. And I'm fine with removing Section 7.1. I'm almost past the point of caring what happens to v4 for the most part. It's over. We should move on with v6. However, this is the one stick which end users have by which they can beat their ISPs about the head and shoulder as necessary to get their reverse zones delegated to them so that they can manage them in v6. Take this away and you virtually guarantee that end users who know what they're doing end up becoming ARIN direct end users and stop getting space from ISPs altogether just because that's what they have to do to get IN-ADDRs.
That seems to happen, I might observe, regardless of the policy. Thank you.
I'm going to be closing the microphone shortly. Please approach the mics if you wish to speak on this policy.
Center rear. Was he first? I apologize. Front center.
Jason Schiller, Google. Can I suggest we make the implementation of this dependent upon a services document being published which covers the delegation of reverse DNS?
So let's be very clear. There's actually no implementation to this policy, meaning, to my knowledge, the community's not asking us to offer any different services or change any different services or change administration of how we currently administer a number of resources.
Right, so the implementation would be updating the NRPM text.
Yeah,
The
the
execution
removal
of
of
the
it from the
policy.
NRPM would not occur prior to a services catalog appearing online. Happy to do so.
Thank you. Rear.
Mike Joseph, Google, again. To Owen's comment and concerning the specific text that's up here, which is the existing text in the NRPM, it's actually fairly problematic. If one reads this text strictly, one might interpret, say, a residential access ISP as having to delegate every assignment they might make to their customers. Does one believe that every access ISP shall be compelled to offer DNS delegation to every home they serve?
Yeah, I'm going to defer that question to Owen at the front microphone, and I'll also note that the chair has indicated his desire to close the microphones, so anybody who is interested,
I'll
please
be
get
very
in line now.
10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lines are closed. No one enter the queue.
Matt, you're in queue or out of queue? Out. Okay.
Owen DeLong, Black Lotus Communications, ARIN AC. One word answer to Mike Joseph, yes.
Right.
Okay,
We-
the mics
we-
are closed, thank you.
There is a requirement presently in the NRPM that covers directory services. It is its own section. That's why it's, same place that residential privacy occurs. There's an expectation that you'll populate who is and put in the appropriate reverse maps.
Thank you.
It's entirely up to the shepherd and chair. No, you got enough feedback?
I think we're fine at this point.
Okay.
It clearly needs massive overhaul before we can make any kind of meaningful request of the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.